The clock on Nathan Coleman's dashboard read 8:44 a.m., and his interview was set to begin in 16 minutes, the most important 16 minutes of his entire year. But as he turned onto 5th Street, still 3 blocks from the glass tower where his future was supposed to change, he saw a woman collapsed on the wet sidewalk, her briefcase open beside her, papers scattering in the wind while people stepped around her like she wasn't even there. Nathan looked at the building ahead, then back at the stranger gasping for breath in the rain. He knew exactly what he stood to lose. He pulled over anyway. If you believe that kindness still matters, that doing the right thing can quietly change the entire direction of a life, take a moment right now to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to this channel. Stories like this deserve to be passed along. Nathan was 37 years old, and for the past 3 years he had been raising his 8-year-old daughter, Sophie, alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in Columbus, Ohio, where the radiator clanked all night and the faucet dripped no matter how many times he tightened it. He had once worked as a logistics supervisor with a steady paycheck until his wife died suddenly of an aneurysm on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday. Everything he had built quietly came apart after that. He missed shifts he couldn't afford to miss, fell behind on work he used to handle in his sleep, and within 8 months he was let go. The 18 months that followed were a blur of temp jobs, warehouse shifts, and rent checks written with hands that shook a little more each time. Sophie never once complained about what they didn't have. She was a quiet, watchful child who noticed when her father hadn't eaten and would silently push half her plate toward him. She told him more than once that their small apartment felt like the safest place in the world because he was in it. Nathan carried those words like a second heartbeat, especially on mornings when getting out of bed felt impossible. Then, on a Wednesday in early spring, an email arrived from Sinclair Dynamics, a logistics and technology firm expanding rapidly across the Midwest. They wanted him for a final interview for a regional operations director position, a job that would pay nearly triple what he made stacking pallets. Nathan read the email 4 times before he let himself believe it was real. He pressed his one good shirt the night before, packed Sophie's lunch before sunrise, walked her to the babysitter's, and told himself that nothing was going to get in his way that morning. Rain had other ideas. A late-season storm had flooded intersections overnight, slowing every downtown street to a crawl. Nathan checked the clock obsessively as he inched forward, block by block, until the Sinclair Dynamics tower finally rose into view. That was when he saw her, a woman in a soaked charcoal coat, half propped against a storefront wall, one hand pressed to her chest, the other trembling as she tried and failed to reach a phone that had slid out of reach. Her briefcase had spilled open across the sidewalk, and dozens of people in suits and rain jackets simply walked around her, umbrellas tilted low, eyes fixed straight ahead. Nathan didn't think. He pulled to the curb, left his hazards blinking, and ran through the rain toward her. He gathered the scattered papers with one hand while dialing 911 with the other, kneeling beside her to keep her upright and talking, asking her name, asking her to stay with him. She was pale, her breathing shallow and uneven. Nathan pulled off his own jacket, the only decent one he owned, and wrapped it around her shoulders even as the rain soaked straight through his shirt. While they waited for the ambulance, he kept glancing toward the glass tower 2 blocks away. 8:58, 9:06, 9:14. Somewhere on the 14th floor, a receptionist was likely calling his name in an empty waiting room. His interview had come and gone, and there was nothing left to do but stay exactly where he was. When the paramedics arrived, Nathan helped lift the woman onto the stretcher, tucked her briefcase beside her, and stepped back into the rain, watching the ambulance doors close. He didn't know that the woman he had just spent 20 minutes keeping alive on a Columbus sidewalk was Catherine Reyes, founder and CEO of Sinclair Dynamics, and the very person scheduled to interview him in 40 minutes. At the hospital, doctors determined that Catherine had suffered a sudden hypertensive episode brought on by weeks of exhaustion and skipped meals during an aggressive company expansion. A resident later told her plainly that if she had been lying on that sidewalk much longer without help, the outcome could have been very different. When she was finally stable enough to speak, her first question wasn't about the company. It was about the man in the gray sweater who had stayed with her in the rain. That evening, Nathan sat at his kitchen table staring at a form email from Sinclair Dynamics, thanking him for his interest, but explaining that, due to his failure to attend the scheduled interview, the company would be moving forward with other candidates. He read it once and sat very still. From the living room, he heard Sophie laughing at something on television, a small, bright sound that cut straight through his disappointment. He walked in, sat beside her, and let her lean against his shoulder without saying a word about what he had lost that morning. The next day, there was a knock at his apartment door. Nathan opened it to find two people in business attire, and behind them, still moving carefully, was Catherine Reyes, holding the same briefcase he had picked up off the wet pavement. She hadn't come to apologize for the email. She needed to understand something. Why had he stopped when 100 other people that morning hadn't? Nathan told her simply that he had seen someone who needed help and that for him, there had never really been a decision to make at all. Catherine glanced towards Sophie peeking around the kitchen doorway, then back at Nathan, and told him that dozens of people had walked past her that morning, all rushing toward meetings they considered important. Nathan had somewhere important to be too. He had stopped anyway. Catherine offered him a second interview. This time, Nathan arrived 20 minutes early, still not entirely sure it wasn't some kind of mistake. He didn't get the job because he had helped the CEO. He answered every question about supply chains, team management, and operational crises with the calm clarity of someone who had spent years solving problems with almost no resources to solve them with. When Catherine asked what he considered his greatest strength as a leader, Nathan thought of every warehouse shift, every missed bill, every night Sophie had quietly covered him with a blanket, and he told her that a good leader wasn't the one who reached the finish line first. A good leader was the one who made sure nobody got left behind on the way there. 3 days later, his phone rang. He got the job. The salary changed nearly everything about their lives, but Nathan didn't buy anything extravagant with his first paycheck. He paid off the back rent he had quietly fallen behind on, finally had the radiator fixed, bought Sophie a new winter coat, and opened a small savings account in her name, the first one either of them had ever had. Within a year, Nathan had become one of the most trusted operations directors at Sinclair Dynamics, respected not because of the story everyone eventually heard about the rainy sidewalk, but because he brought the same steadiness to every crisis he faced afterward. Catherine never forgot that morning either. Years later, she would tell new employees during their first week that the most important interview she had ever conducted happened on a flooded sidewalk in Columbus, Ohio, before the candidate had even stepped through the door. Sometimes, she told them, life disguises its greatest opportunities as problems. Nathan thought he had lost the only chance he had. He never realized he had already passed the most important test of all. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who could use a little hope today, and subscribe to this channel for more stories about kindness, courage, and second chances. And before you go, if you believe that doing the right thing matters even when nobody is watching, type the words "kindness always wins" in the comments below. Because sometimes the greatest doors in our lives don't open because we walked through them first. They open because, for one crucial moment, we stopped to help someone else find their way through.